How's it going, people? Been thinking a lot lately about nostalgia and how it affects millennials around, I guess, the age of 30. I guess pretty much people I'm talking to right now about in this video is the age range of like 25 to 35. Are they all millennials? Those groupings are kind of a soft line anyway. They're not a hard transition. But I was just having a normal conversation with my dad actually. I was talking about like how I'm trying to go back to things from when I was a kid, basically with using things like an iPod and playing these old game systems and all that type of stuff, getting DVDs to watch movies instead of using Netflix, all this stuff. And he just made kind of like a funny remark. It wasn't like a serious conversation, but he's just like, "You're too young to be going through a midlife crisis already." And I was kind of like, "Huh, maybe it is a midlife crisis of sorts where I'm feeling somewhat like I don't belong or something like that." I don't really know what a midlife crisis is. I never really got it, but maybe that's what it is, where you feel like you're out of your childhood or something. But so that conversation happened, and I've been thinking about it, like why that could be the case. I mean, we as gamers, we all talk about games from the good old days, but it's more than that. It's kind of like with everything. So I've been thinking about why, what some of the potential reasons are for this. And the thing that I was really considering is the rate of change for people in that age range was faster, perhaps, than previous generations. And maybe I'm just really stupid, but you can let me know. But in my mind, it kind of makes sense to an extent because if in the 60s to the 80s, for instance, things got more advanced. Like cars got more sporty looking and more efficient, and everything evolved gradually. You went from or black and white TVs to color TVs, maybe transitioning into trying to think of some other things, maybe typewriters into electric ones. But it was slow, and it was still the things were still doing the same thing, or they were the same thing. They just did it more efficiently instead of changing everything about how you do that thing. It's really, and everything really comes to the internet in a way, and smartphones. That's what we're probably going to get back to. But I think the difference is the world that the world you used to grow up in as a kid was still there for you, when you were in your 20s and 30s and having kids of your own. So the world you were raising your kid in, the world that my dad raised me in wasn't all too much different than the world he was brought up in. Still no internet, still nothing. Small towns, connected, had to go somewhere in person to do things, and landlines and no instant gratification. And then all of a sudden, my generation, the age range I described, is growing up. I remember a time with no computer in the household and only a landline, no cell phones. But then when I was about 9, 8, somewhere in there, the family computer becomes a thing. And before that, before we had a computer, it was the PlayStation 1, which was, I guess, the beginning of it. And then from getting internet in the house, which was crazy, dial up, all that stuff. It's so primitive, but it was so advanced for the time to just be able to go online and look at things. And then after that, shortly after, people started getting cell phones, what we call now a dumb phone, but back then it was insane. I would always play Snake on my parents' phone, I remember. I did not get a cell phone until I was in high school, a little flip phone. Not long after the cell phones, we had the first iPhone released in 2007. So, internet in house around age 9, cell phone starts popping with flip phones and everything like that starts popping up for people around, for most people, I would say around when I was like 11, 12. Most all kids have cell phones by the time I'm 13 to 14. Many a kid have a smartphone by the time I'm 17. And then within all this stuff is, things like the iPod, which changed how we listened to music. And then with the onset of everyone having computers and smartphones, Facebook and MySpace, and it was all starting it like everything was just happening so fast and changing how we interact. Like I said, from when I was 8 to just using a landline and going in person to visit everyone you had to talk to the computer slowly changing it, and then the phones. And it's kind of like when we were going through it, everything was just like so neat and such a an evolutionary leap in technology that it was so cool. I think most people just did it without thinking about what they were leaving behind. And I don't think all of it's negative, but the best way I could grasp it, so MLB playoffs just started, and I was able to check in on the game on my lunch at work on my cell phone. And I was thinking about talking through this video during the day, and I was like, this is such a good example because I can remember, for some reason, a memory I have when I was a kid golfing with my dad. And it was around this time because it was a playoff baseball game that was happening. And we were out golfing, and the game had started at whatever it was, 4 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I don't know. But we're both big Red Sox fans. And I can just remember us trying to get the round in before the game started, and we didn't. And there was like this feeling of angst and wonder of, are the Red Sox winning? And there was nothing we could do to check it. And I was just thinking how foreign that feeling is only 20 years ago, to where now you could just watch the game live in your pocket wherever you want, just with a TV app on your phone. So initially it was you don't have a phone, you can't check the game. Then you on your non-smartphones, you could just do like web browsing of some sort. Before the iPhone, like Blackberries and stuff, you could just do web browsing and you could like see the scores and whatnot. Then we had the iPhone, which had the apps, the ESPN app, the MLB app, all that stuff, to where now you can actually just watch the phone. So like all that happened within 20 years. It's weird to have lived through all of it. I remember, for instance, too, TiVo. When did that start? I'm gonna do a quick search. Like DVR systems. I remember everyone just say TiVo it, and I think it just meant DVR, which you could record shows or games or whatever that you weren't home to see, so you could watch later. And I could remember. So it's. I'm trying to actually find it. It looks like TiVo existed in the 90s, but most people didn't have it yet. And it looks the early 2000s is about when people were using it a lot. But anyway, I can remember that as a kid, where if you were out at an event and you saw the game and someone was there, they would literally, before you said anything, just pre-warn you, hey, I didn't see the Yankees game yet. Don't say anything because I recorded it for when I get home. It's so crazy to think, with all the information just pounding on us all the time, how hard it would be to not hear that or see that inadvertently pulling something up like Twitter or something. Yeah, just different worlds, different period, so many different periods that we live through. And technology is just changing it so fast. So I think that's why, kind of bringing it back to this, is like living through that whirlwind of all these rapid changes. The pace of it kind of just causes like a initial sensory overload, and then by the time you're done adjusting, the next thing is out, and your comfort zone never really settles in. And so maybe what we enjoyed, or the way of life that we were most fond of growing up, was taken away from us too quickly before we had enough time to enjoy it, and that's why we crave it so much. Something like that. I've just been thinking about it because the change is so quick. And now I see with kids today, it's kind of like they don't even have, what's the right word? Like, life just seems like trends now. The latest trend is what, it's not even along to call it like a new advance. Meme culture, and you're talking in a different language almost, and that changes by the week to whatever the new trend is. It's weird. The rate of change is just getting faster and faster. But maybe the new generation won't feel as nostalgic as us, so young, so early onset because the change is so drastic for them from the get-go. I don't know, it's interesting, but I think that's why there's such, if even if you go on YouTube, there's so much nostalgia content, people just talking about the old ways and playing old games, just using old hardware. The around 30-year-olds is really going through that early midlife crisis, I guess. I don't know. Is it a midlife crisis? What do you think, guys? Was it actually just better, or is it something like I'm kind of describing and talking through right now? Because there's a lot of other things you could talk about. Like I don't want to be doom and gloomy. I'm obviously a man, so I'm kind of speaking to other men I talk to, but it just seems like a lot of people I know just want to kind of have a job and a house, semi-private with a driveway, maybe a little garage, a one-car garage, 3 or 4 bedrooms, nice yard, potentially with a pool, potentially with just a fenced-in area for the dogs, and, semi-rural, not in town, not piled on top of people, some privacy to enjoy your life, and that just seems so unobtainable. And if that's not your goal, then, maybe your goal is an apartment life in a city or something, whatever it is, the normal things that people have chased in the past as an adult, even having kids for a lot of people is probably too much money if they want to. So you get the gist. Pursuing those lifestyles with today's world economy, just the state of things is very, very difficult to obtain. I'm sure most of you listening to this have probably seen the videos comparing the purchasing power of your dollar in the 60s or 70s and 80s, the difference in house costs then to the average salary compared to now, all that type of stuff, and how much more difficult it is to get that, and the pressures that boomers put on their kids because, they don't fully grasp that it's such a drastic difference to when they were young adults. But that could also be something that's causing it. If it's not the fast change, it's just because having all that stuff that we want, is just harder to get. So we latch on to a time that we liked. I don't know. That rate of change, I think, is definitely something. So it's just such a weird thing to only be 30 and to have the world you grew up in just feel like a completely distant past. Like sometimes I feel like I'm an 80-year-old looking back on, my childhood again. Like that's what it kind of feels like. How many times removed it is. That's about it, boys. I just was thinking about that. Please do, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. It does actually seem to help YouTube show the video to more people. And I look forward to reading your comments in the comment section. Always nice to hear from you. Take care of yourself. Peace.